Welcome, everybody. This is the fourth session of the Mystic Jesus, the Mind of Love. I've had some requests for the recordings of it. So as a reminder, let people know they're available, the recordings, people that may say, oh, darn it, I meant to be there or wanted to be there. So they're posted and available through the Unity of Nashville. Any donations and offerings go directly to Unity of Nashville for the class and what's been provided here. They're also on the YouTube channel for the Spiritual Life Center up in Michigan. Reverend Ron is the lead there. Jack and I serve there with him. And we've put it on our YouTube channel as well. So it's easy for people to find this, what we've been putting forward these last 4 weeks. And
Bless you.
thanks, honey. The feedback has been that people got a lot out of it, even if they weren't here live and participating in the discussions and the presentations. So I think it holds a great deal of possibility, a great deal of potential there. So you're welcome to put it out and encouraged to do so. And if you've got groups, book studies, communities in any way that would relate to the teachings of Jesus, to the message of Jesus, to a mind of love, to being and expressing this practically, then this is absolutely a demonstrated resource for that. So welcome everybody. Courtney, hi honey. Jeffrey. All right, let's read a little something and see how this, what moves you about this. So my summary of this is that we've been introduced to Jesus, some of us, as a mystic that invites us to go beyond a historical Jesus and to experience an indwelling Christ, an indwelling Christ, which is the basis of Unity New Thought teachings, a divine consciousness that is alive within each of us. So then we're reminded in this writing that Jesus was not merely a teacher about God, but an expression of God's love in the world. So Jesus, not as merely a teacher about God, but an expression of God's love in the world. He came not to be worshiped, but to show us how to live from our highest aspect, to be highest self-led, the truth of our being, the essence of our being. So then we're then invited, challenged to move beyond any traditional dogma and to open to and discover and embrace Jesus as a radical mystic, one who clearly embodied love, forgiveness, transformation at the deepest levels. So as we look then at these themes, how will we do this? How will we, you and I, every one of us here, do what we've been invited to? So how can we live Christ consciousness over dogma? How can you live Christ consciousness daily? How have you been doing this during the month of March, during our classwork? Anybody? How do you live Christ consciousness in your own life, in your own house, in your own family, in your own workplace? Anybody? Alan?
Yeah, and I work with a lot of people I wouldn't hang out with, but I've often, the way I've resolved that is, well, one, you never meet anybody that God doesn't love. I remember that all the time. But I also remember that we're all God. And when I start to get a little bit upset with somebody, I remember that. And it's starting off a year or so ago, it was a little uh, hard to get started. It was work, kind of like that complaint-free bracelet deal. But now it's just I can look at them and I can feel like that meditation we did about the gold light. I use that a lot. But now I got like an abbreviated version of it. So I find myself in a situation I just, okay, we're good. And I'm complete.
Powerful. Yeah, it's like I had some image of like you zapping gold ball energy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, yes. It's quicker. Yeah, Reverend Ron.
I'm seeking to live love in expression, and in doing so, to be as frequently as I can remember to ask God to guide my way and direct my day.
Guide my way, direct my day, direct my day, guide my way. Very powerful, especially if we're this close to giving somebody a piece of our mind. Like, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be guided to do that. It says I could be guided away from that. I could be guided away from that with a pause, with a presencing of myself, which is one of my answers. That I'm living this and aspiring to live this through presencing myself, which means everything we've ever been taught to take a deep breath and get myself on a solid Christed consciousness ground before I fire off an email or respond to their eye roll or their mood or their attitude. So it's alive. It's alive and true. Lisa, honey, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the prayers that are in this, those early chapters have really touched, I've been putting a lot of attention on them because they've really touched a humility in me. And the thing that I have been doing is not assuming that I know what's best for somebody else. And boy, I tell you, I love to have all the answers, but they're touching into that humility, knowing that if I can just know their wholeness, that's really the best gift I can do. And I've got kids right now going through stuff. They're grown kids, and just in the work that I do, I'm often working with people who are in crisis. So so that's been something I'm doing to live in Christ consciousness.
It's beautiful to witness, honey. And it's like that's also we've been instructed in this way. Like to wonder what they're going to do instead of tell them what to do. To wait and see what will they do? What are you going to do about this? And if any of you got into the chosen, and if you haven't yet, that was clear in that they're coming to Jesus. Like, look what he's doing. Look what he said. He didn't even like me. What I'm not going to forgive him. Did he forget? And he's like, what are you going to do about this? What do you see as a possibility? So let me get this straight. So you're not going to forgive him until you're forgiven? Is that what you're saying? Like, so to wait and see, and at a minimum is so powerful, Lisa. Like to interrupt my coaching when there's no one coachable there.
Yeah, I'm reminded of something Parker Palmer says. The human soul doesn't want to be fixed, just wants to be seen and deeply heard. And that's certainly opened up my heart when people do that for me. And I don't like to be educated when I'm in pain. So anyway, I'm just really noticing that even when I just have thoughts that I think I know what's best for my son or anybody, it's that's what I'm working on. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful to witness. Deb.
I've been trying to, I'm working on developing a practice of consciously acknowledging the Christ in the people around me as I have different people around me. I thought about it when I led a church group of women last Sunday. And then I went, well, that's great. You're in church. Like, how hard is that? I mean, not that I would do it naturally, but didn't seem that hard. But when I went to tennis practice last night, and it was my tennis team, and some people I like a lot and some people I don't like a lot, or, you know, just those places where I would never think about it, trying to stop for just a second and acknowledging the Christ consciousness, you know, the Christ in all of us. And that is making a difference.
Well, it does make, thank you, honey. It's powerful to think about. Like, I got my tail wagging thinking about it. Like, instead of shifting out of my injustice collector, instead of everything they've ever done to me, and here we go again to, wait a minute, what are they doing right? Where have they contributed? What is going well here? Which doesn't deny that there may be issues of some sort. And I'm going to see that this is a human being in a human being state, a human being in all of their humanness and all of their psychological humanness, all of their emotional humanness, all their physical, financial humanness. I'm going to feel differently about them. I'm going to feel differently toward them. So I'm not going to be as righteous as I'm patterned to be when I'm not careful. All right, so Christ consciousness over dogma. Christ consciousness over concept. So then number 2 then for me is from the basis of the book, forgiveness as the foundation of mysticism. So I'm pretty confident that most of us have taken several trips around the forgiveness bush. And I was asked this past week, like, how do you forgive? And it's like, oh my God, I could answer that question for the rest of my life. How much I have written, cried, stomped out, batted out, Hoffman processed out, mystery schooled out, sound bathed out, rebirthed out, sweat lodged out, like no stone left unturned, and pages and pages and pages and pages. So the question then for our reflection tonight that I brought is, how did you do it? How have you forgiven the unforgivable? How have you forgiven what you thought you couldn't or shouldn't? How have you done it, Tanya?
One way that has helped me to forgive the unforgivable is to recognize my role in whatever the situation was. And in some cases, that's taken 5 years for me to peel back enough layers and to become just emotionally sound enough to say, wow, I did play a part in that. And then that becomes such a place of release. Maybe not complete relief, because I might still be in the situation, but at least I understand that I accepted that. And I said yes to it. Because sometimes I think perhaps the unforgiveness comes from a confusion as to what was my part in this? How did I get to this place? And then you just wiggle, 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 wiggle until maybe eventually it becomes clear. And sometimes that realization for me comes from just the most off place I wouldn't expect it from. Oh, I'm talking about grief and somebody passed, and oops, this is coming up for me. Oh no, I got to talk about it now with myself. So that's what I think.
Beautiful to hear, honey, and so powerful to witness, like even owning our part. And Byron Katie used to use a gesture, like when somebody was there to do the work with her, and I'm talking atrocities, tragedy. I mean, very, very heavy, burdened some human had bared. And it's like they did this much, and my part was just this much. but that's where 100% of my pain is. I can't change what they did, but whatever my part is, I hold all the power in going toward that. And that's helped me over the years. Like what they did belongs to them, but that is their path. And the hurt that was caused in me, the disappointment, the despair, the threats, the whatever, is my responsibility. So then, and it sounds like for you wisely, Tanya and me, to look at what did I do that contributed to any of that. It also helps me when I'm looking at that to see what my part is, that I don't recriminate myself. It's not about further self-abuse and further self-hate and what was I thinking and what a loser I am, or how manipulative, controlling, and domineering I was, instead of like going in there to say, I'm going to look at myself with some compassion, willing to forgive self as well as others. Ron?
It helps me to distinguish the behavior from the person and be able to observe that the behavior may be unacceptable, but the person who performed that behavior is still the perfect human being, and the evidence of the behavior merely indicates that the person is hurting and deserves my compassion and not my judgment.
Thank you. So powerful, which is not to confuse the behavior with the soul. The soul is pure in essence and a confused one, a hurting one. And their behavior is where the hurt is. Their behavior is what I couldn't accept or synthesize at the time. So far easier to forgive when we're clear about the behavior, especially if we're doing some of the things we've already talked about, to look to see if I was in the shape they're in, I would likely be doing the same thing. If I was in their consciousness, if I was in that condition, I'd be more apt to do what they just did. So some kind of relating to it, imagining, putting myself in their shoes. Courtney, do you want to speak, honey, or do you change your mind?
Well, you beautifully said it. That's where I was going to go, Martha. Is and Tanya, I just love so much what you said. That was glorious. Thank you. My addition to what you were saying, Tanya, is when I'm able to see myself in the other, it's like reconciliation just happens, neutralization just happens. And like you had mentioned, Tanya, sometimes it's not. Sometimes space and time are healers, and being able to go back and, like you said, peel away these layers. But on my best day, when I'm able to relate with the person's experience and see myself in that, like I do that too, and it might not look exactly like this, but that frequency of that, I have that too, and I do it in this way. So I find the sameness in it, and then we're human beings again, having a human experience.
Thank you, honey. I've practiced also, many of you likely have. Do you remember Colin Tipping and radical forgiveness? I had him in the church many times in Louisville and studied intensively with him. And he spoke about forgiveness as radical forgiveness. And one of the worksheets, we had worksheets that we wrote out, like what we're still bound up in or unforgiven in. And one of the lines in there, one of the practices from that was, even though I cannot comprehend this, even though I don't understand how or why this had to happen, I forgive it. Even though I can't understand how or why this had to happen, I'm choosing forgiveness of it. I want myself set free from this. So a radical forgiveness, even if I can't accept what happened. I don't understand what happened, and I can't keep torturing myself with the why and why and why and why me. Instead, to free myself from it. Anybody else? What does forgiveness mean to you, Deb? How have you forgiven?
I was just going to build on what you were saying, in terms of even if I'm not to the point of seeing my part in it or seeing the other person as a child of God or anything else, just starting. I had a situation a while ago now, but still really sticks with me, where I was not working well with a client that I felt they were being mean to me and they were jeopardizing our business, and just an awful, awful, awful person. And I decided I should start blessing this person. I started saying, God bless Adrian, except when I started, all I could do was God bless Adrian, because I sure as hell can't. And that's literally what I said, probably, I don't know, weeks, a month, whatever. Eventually, the end part finally fell off and all that energy got out, but I still started. And I think that's sometimes you get so bound up, or I get so bound up in things, that I don't start the process, even if that's the only way I can do it. And it speaks to what you were saying in terms of, I don't understand this, how this could possibly have happened, but I want to get out from under it.
Just like that, honey. And that one of my first teachers in this said that, and that's what you're describing, at least for me, Deb, is a willingness.
Right.
Like, I am willing to free myself. I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to shift this.
Mhm.
And at times I wasn't, and I had to be willing to be willing and to be willing not to be willing all at the same time.
Right.
And I still did something. I went in the direction of, this is what I can do from where I am. This is what I can offer today, which is, you're back in the hands of God where you've always been. And I am coming in that direction, and I'll do what I can here. Jill, Dan.
One of the from what the readings of last week, I kind of got some of the workbook manuals, the expanded Kenneth Wapnick, and in that more detailed breakdown of what we were sharing last week, there was a big emphasis on being aware of our own innocence. And that's not a human oriented perspective, because I'm not innocent at a physical level. I've done some dastardly deeds. but to have the access to that and spend a few moments in my innocence, and if I'm not in that place, where am I coming from to this other person that can be of love or understanding or compassion, if I'm not understanding myself from that perspective? If I'm in a place of, I'm angry at you, I'm hurt by you, I'm sad about you, how am I in the presence to say, I'm feeling the love that does surround me and enfold me, and from that place say, I have something worth sharing with you? Because if I can't get to my balance, then I can't help someone else. So it goes back to the core thing of the Course in Miracles. You need to take a more compassionate perspective for them. They are screaming or whispering, I don't know what love is. Would you show me what love is so that I could understand it? And I can't, if I don't know what love is, then I can't be a blessing to them in the same way that I would aspire to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too, honey. Same. And like, I was quick to, like, I did a lot more forgiving them before I'd ever forgiven myself, and much quicker to see their innocence than unable to see my own innocence. And not that I haven't done some dastardly things, but innocent in my dastardly things were done out of a woundedness, out of my own confusion, out of my own split mind, my own separated mind that believed whatever it was believing, that interpreted something that caused that. So I've had a lot of self-forgiveness to do and a lot of making up for that. So the decades that I spent thinking forgiveness was about taking somebody else off the hook without ever realizing the other end of that hook was in me. And that's where it started. There was another hand. Just unmute her. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about what Colin Tipping said about radical forgiveness, and I started thinking about that in terms of I heard about radical welcoming, which is what we do at church, right? And what they do at AA meetings. It's you're welcome, you're welcome. Well, I started thinking about that about myself when I think back on my dastardly deeds or the things I did. I think, well, that's part of me, and I have to welcome that in and forgive it and take the whole thing. This is, here I am, and with all of that, it's all me, and it's okay. I have to make peace with it, but it's welcome. It's part of me. I did it, and I own it. Here I am. Peace.
Yes. Thank you. 100%. And believing what I believed at the time, that's a normal outpicturing of the shape I was in.
Mhm.
Joan, if I missed anybody else, just re-raise your hand. Go ahead, Joan.
Okay, there I am. Yeah, thank you. Everyone has added to my uh, knowledge of forgiveness. But one thing I keep coming back to is when a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about 70 times 7. And with me, that has a whole new perception, because I think, as Tanya said, if there is anything that happens in my daily life that triggers an area where I thought all was forgiven, then it's not. And I need to do it again until I no longer think of that person who did what I thought was such a horrible thing in the past, when something in the present happens. And when I can bring up that person's face and see only love, and understand, as all of you have talked about, how that person was crying out for love when and had hardened her heart so that she couldn't give it. And yeah, and to see the part that I played in the drama. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, honey. Full-time job.
Yeah.
And I put the Radical Forgiveness website over there in case any of you want to check that out, or go in there and get the tools. All the tools are free, the worksheets and that, if that just prompts any of you to take a look at that. And then I'd looked up several definitions of this today, and I've done this. Many of you know that I've been practicing forgiveness since my earliest memory at age 3, when I first declared I'm a minister. I'm here to be a minister at age 3. And I was given these giant keys for my life that were visions, and they were forgiveness and gratitude. So I took it as divine assignments, appointments, and this was then necessary. If I'm here to be minister, then this was daily practice, forgiveness. And so I've listened to people talk about it. I've pulled quotes about it many, many times, and again today. And Byron Katie used to describe forgiveness as when you realize what you thought happened didn't. When I realized what I thought happened didn't. So just leave that there. Oprah Winfrey says it as forgiveness is when you give up believing your past should have been different than it was. When you give up the belief that your past should have been different than it was. What I found today says, and it called it spiritual forgiveness, involves setting free resentments, anger, a fostering of compassion, and promoting reconciliation and healing, ultimately leading to a deeper connection with ourselves, with others, and with God or the divine, whatever you call it. The other thing that I found that was moving to me, and I've said this on the earliest call, I think that the earliest class that we did here together, likely when I read that poem that I'd written, that the hurt may always be with me. That even with forgiveness, an intentional choice to let go of the resentment, to let go of the anger, to let go of the force that I feel around it, the act or the hurt that offended me may always be with me. And forgiveness is there as a direction to go in. Lisa.
Ooh, I just want to breathe that in. That's really helpful. And I'm also thinking of what you said about not necessarily understanding why. Those are very helpful. Thank you. I don't know if I'm the only one who's had this experience, but it's a little bit like what Courtney was saying. Grace has come in a very unique form for me because everything I've ever judged, every person that I've ever judged, and the feelings that it created for whatever needs I wanted to meet, I've actually had, I hate to use the word opportunity, but I can actually say I've had the opportunity to experience being on the other side of that. Like, how crazy is that? So what does that look like? Like when I think about, oh, I hate that thing my brother did, and I'm like, oh, when was I afraid? And I did that too. And I actually can see it and find it. And it's in that shared feeling and that shared need that it becomes easier for me to access the compassion. And, I have to be honest, like sometimes it's just like a jumping bean. It's there and then it's not. But it is a strange thing. It's such a mysterious thing. And I've thought of this for the last few years, how everything I've ever judged, I've actually had the opportunity to experience on some level, the flip side. So I'm just paying attention.
Take it back. Say it ain't so. Yes, honey. And then some. And then some. So let's transition, and I'm going to do a prayer and invite you to do your prayer and then play a piece of music. And then Denise will step right in here with her wisdom and her impressions and her commentary on what this means to her. So this is from the book, and in the hard book, it's on page 196. I invite you to close your eyes. and to imagine Jesus living with you. That Jesus is alive within you, that it's not just a platitude, the Christ within. And imagine melding and merging with that energy. And breathe in what you believe and think that Jesus is about. Take a big, deep breath and breathe in. What would it feel like? Atonement. At one-ment.
Sometimes I fall to my knees and pray. Come, Jesus, come. Let today be the day. Sometimes I feel like but I'm holding on to a hope that won't fade. Oh, Jesus, come. We've been so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you to come and turn this around. Deep down, I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. There'll be no war. There'll be no change when Jesus comes. Let today be the day. So come follow me. And no will believe in the power of His name. Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. Deep down, I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. One day you'll come. We'll stand face to face. Come and lay it all down. 'Cause it might be today. The time is right now. There's nothing to wait. Your paths will be washed by rivers of grace. Jesus. For the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. This world is in fall on Jesus' Lord. Jesus' Lord.
Dear God, please do for me what I cannot do for myself. Dear God, please do for me what I cannot do for myself. Guide me away from the darkness and fill me with your light. Help me, dear God, see the innocence in everyone, and including myself. Lift my soul. Renew my body. Open my eyes, that I might see the love that is always there. Amen. Thank you, Lisa, for the lyrics. And it's CC Winans, and I put the link there for the music.
So everybody just breathe. You know, in a few weeks, we are going to be in what the Christian religion calls Holy Week. And there have been a few times when I've had the beauty of being at Unity Village during that week, and it was pretty profound for me to begin to think about what that week was about and what it meant metaphysically to me. And so I think first, let me say that what Lisa, what you shared at the beginning of our conversation tonight, learning to listen and being compassionate with others, has been a turning point in my own life. To offer forgiveness with people sitting in the room with me, sharing some of the things that they had done, and me not looking at them in the same way that I did to someone else who might have done the same thing to me, but being able to be compassionate to them, and then looking at myself and going, why am I holding that grudge against someone else? What's the difference between those two people? In my mind's eye, what's it about for me? And so the first thing that comes up for me is something that we are told in the scriptures that Jesus said hanging on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that phrase goes through my mind lots of times. I've kind of anchored it in my body and my mind. And so when a judgment comes up, and they do, sometimes that comes up with it. Forgive them, for they really don't know what they're doing in this moment. And what that's helped me to do in my own personal life is realize that they were hurting also. And all they knew to do was lash out at me or someone else. So I want you to look, those of you that have your book, at page 158, because I'm hoping to set the stage for you for your own personal Holy Week coming up, whether you start it now or you wait till the Holy Week happens. And there are 4 paragraphs on that page that I would love for someone to read aloud and then us to kind of process a little bit, because what I see, and I think what Mary Ann saw, and I think what a lot of us are beginning to understand, is that crucifixion and resurrection are huge symbols for us. And the only way I'm going to resurrect is to acknowledge the crucifixion part and to do my forgiveness and rise again. So someone be willing to read those 4 paragraphs on page 158. Stacy?
Crucifixion and resurrection aren't just symbols. They are spiritual dynamics that underlie our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Fear depresses us, while love uplifts us. This is the existential loom onto which we weave our lives. In every instant, we choose crucifixion or resurrection, fear or love. In any moment, the ego will have its way with us, and in any moment, we can rise above. The ego crucifies by separating us from each other, which is why we cannot be joined in crucifixion. We are joined in resurrection, for it is the realization that we cannot be separated. Every thought of guilt is the nail by which we crucify, and every thought of forgiveness is the power by which we resurrect. Guilt is the cornerstone of the ego's thought system, just as innocence is the cornerstone of the Holy Spirit's. In projecting guilt onto someone else, we are attacking ourselves. Like an autoimmune disease, the ego insanely attacks that which we are meant to bless. Given that the power of the mind is literally infinite, it becomes an instrument of mass destruction more powerful than any we can imagine.
So Stacy, do you want to say anything about that you just read aloud?
it's very the powerful juxtaposition of the crucifixion and the resurrection. And again, going to mindset and rigor in practice. How am I holding this moment? How am I participating, or who am I being in this moment? Am I crucifying, or am I uplifting ourselves and others?
Yeah. And that forgiveness is in the middle of all of that, which I believe that Jesus, the master teacher, showed us in that whole process by saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so what's coming up for anyone around this right now? Because we've been talking about forgiveness. And this is where the rubber meets the road, right here, when we feel like that we have been crucified. And I know we all have gone through those experiences. And so what is it like to forgive and to resurrect love in a situation like that? What's it like? How do you become the Christ in your own life? Who wants to be brave? Marcia?
Well, several things recently, last year, I mean, that's recent when I'm nearly 70 years old. The self-compassion, Martha, that we're working with in our studies, and the premise truth that we are having 100% human experience and also a divine experience. And when I can remember that and realize where my human experience came from as a cultural conditioning, my upbringing, my religious affiliations, all of that went into that humanity. And it's made me who I am. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the same person.
Yes.
Thank you. Because it has shown me things. No, it wasn't pleasant. And that's, it just is. I appreciate that it's all God, because that is the image I was created in, 100% human, 100% divine. And side note, personally, especially through the end part of this book, the vilification of the ego, I can't go there. I'm sorry. Cannot go there. Yes, the ego promotes separation. But if I didn't, in this realm, if I didn't know that separation, I wouldn't appreciate the oneness.
And I hear you. And what I also know is I think we let the ego go when we go back to the light.
Yeah.
So when we die, and I think maybe that's part of what the Course talks about a lot. I think we get confused because, yes, I agree with you. If I didn't have an ego, I probably wouldn't be here because it kind of weighs me down into this human experience. And so the ultimate is letting go and not being afraid to let go. So, and that's just my perspective. So,
well, thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Tanya, I think you were next, and then Lisa.
Like, I always try to reconcile the ego as something that's not terrible. It's just the stories I tell about myself.
Right.
And so in my grief studies, we're talking about guilt as anger turned on yourself. And so it's not really easy to guilt someone else, unless they are wanting to do that. But what I've noticed is if time has passed and there's distance created, the separation is, yes, obviously there's a social separation when there's some sort of tragedy, like a resurrective experience in process. But inside of that, I think that, at least for me, if I can understand where the guilt is rooted, then I'm able to love a lot easier. And just just a few Sundays ago, somebody, a ghost from my past, came to the center as an invited guest of somebody important. And I have done so much good work in my ministry studies, peeled back so many layers, and recognized my role in so many ways. All I could do was love her. And I thought, how powerful is this work? That recognizing that both of us are just in the pursuit of love.
Yeah.
And what I found is that even after 5 years, not really talking to her much, I'm not gloating, but I feel so accomplished in the work, the personal work I have done, as I could see in her eyes just glimpses of hope. Wow. Is it real? Are you really free from that, Tanya? And I could see that just for a second, maybe she wants to be free too. And I think that's the power of just releasing that anger, that self-anger, that self-loathing of guilt for perhaps just not really realizing the role that I played. And I feel like it's an amazing, just wonderful and totally worth it to do that work. And oh my gosh, how I would love to recruit my old friend to come up to heaven with me. That's how it feels on the other side of that release.
That's beautiful, Tanya, because I believe that's what Jesus, the master teacher, was saying when he said that heaven is amongst us. It's within us and all around us, and you were creating it. You were a part of the creation of that, and that's just beautiful. Lisa, I think you were next.
Yeah, thank you. That's really wonderful, Tanya. I'll be brief. So the question is, how am I living the Christ?
Even though you may feel crucified at times, and when are you ready to be resurrected from that? Yeah.
I learned something when I was in the hospital for so long, and I couldn't tolerate the commercials and the constant, trying to sell me something, but I turned on the Nature Channel, and during those 2 months, I would look at it and I would weep. And I realized that I love this planet so much. And part of what had prevented me from the experience of my own mourning and grief was apathy. Just trying to protect myself from the sense of helplessness that I feel, seeing what's happening to our planet. So I've been doing this process for a while now when I feel grief, and because I'm not very good at intellectualizing stuff. If it's there, it is there. But this thing happens when I go into it and I allow it to move through me. It's like I'm falling into a ditch. And then as I allow it, it's almost like I come up the other side, because I tap into what caused the grief, which is the love. I can't have grief without the love, whatever I lost.
Yeah.
And it just takes care of itself. It's just grace. I don't have to force anything.
And you said an important word, Lisa, allowing. I think when we begin to allow, then the flow happens easier. When I'm pushing against, the thing that I'm pushing against just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So yes, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Jill, Dan, both of you, one of you.
This is not so much a point, maybe a question and a point, in that based on the perspective of there's no order of difficulty.
Right.
And sometimes I think we try to dive in, oh, I'm going to learn this and this one. I'm going to take my kayak and put it in the class 5 rapids of the river, and I'm going to really nail this river. The turbulent, it couldn't be any rougher. And I'm going to learn forgiveness here. And the Course keeps saying there's no order of difficulty. And I think about my life with Jill and my life with my granddaughter, Georgie. And when things come up, and there needs to be a forgiveness and a return to love. It seems in that context of my granddaughter, who I really dearly love, so easy to forgive. So easy to forgive because I know this precious child, this precious woman, from lots of loving moments. And so forgiving her seems easier. Seems I can do this. And then I turn to this unknown person on TV, this unknown person driving down the road, this unknown person that for whatever reason I'm in anger or upset. And it's like, how do I return to love with this moment? How can I return to that? And when I compare it, I say, well, I don't know your loving story. I don't have those moments where I've shared kindness and understanding and love with you. But I think part of the invitation in the Course in Miracles is just take a moment and join with, if you want, Jesus, with your higher self, and this other person, and just spend a moment of saying, can I know that this person is someone I could love? From that, I do meditations where I just stand there with them, and I invite my ego out of the room and their ego out of the room, and just say, I'm just going to, in this meditation, just see you as a divine being, and I am, and just breathe here. That's all I can do, is just breathe. And if love shows up, I allow it to show up because it's there. And that's where I'm in the midst of, is how do you bridge that? There's no order. It's no more difficult to forgive Jill than it is to forgive this unknown person, according to the Course.
Right.
If I embrace what is it that I'm doing, I'm focusing on the love that we've shared and saying that's more important to me. Why can't I connect with this person, whoever, that I don't know them very well, but they somehow upset me? Say, I want to know what your loving presence is while I witness that. I'm in the question, would it be, why not start with the first grade? Do somebody easy. Oh, this is that was easy. Now somebody a little less known, but yeah, I know he's a good guy, and that's a wonderful woman. I don't know them very well, but I think I can forgive them. Just don't jump in on on the big stuff and say, I just give it up, it's impossible. Why not just say it? I think that's the promise of the Course, is that it's saying, we're making this more difficult. I would rather be angry at you. I'm choosing anger because that's why I'm angry. I made that choice, and I've chosen. I'm not even looking at the love option.
So what does it take us to invoke a resurrection when we feel like we're in a crucifixion experience? What does it take? What does it take for any of us? How do you bring on a resurrection? Lysia, you're muted, my dear.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Everything everybody has said, I think is an aspect of me. And some feeling a thread in my soul that feels that she has been hurt and wronged, as opposed to seeing what they did to me was for me. And I feel like one of the most profound sentences and part of the idea of resurrection for me came when I was reading on page 172. Marianne says, but in reality, what happened was that their having closed their hearts to us, then tempted us to close our hearts to them. And that is what hurts. Because if I'm love, and I believe I am, and I myself have watched The Chosen 4 times, I've shared that. I watched through my heart eyes and got out of my head and dropped to my heart and listened. And I believed it. I believed I was made, and you are made, and all are made of love. Because there's only God. What hurts is when I shut that down. And that gives me the reality check that it's my job to go, I see that. I am shutting down what is my natural state of being. And that's the thorn in my heart. And when I get there, that's when I pull the thorn out and say, which is coming in great waves these past few weeks, how can I help you? How can I help? And that can sometimes mean what everyone has said here about you pause, you breathe, you reflect. There are many, many options, but choose one and go with it so you can get the ball rolling and have that growth spurt after all. And that's what I feel like I'm having at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it's a growth spurt. So thank you for letting me share.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lysia. It's a choice. Can you hear that? And that at some point in time, we have to choose whether we want to stay in this crucifixion place and not forgive, or if we want to have a resurrection of love within our own souls. And that sounds pretty simple when I just say it like that. And I have found in my life some things I can forgive very quickly. And I still have a mother in the human body that there are moments where I still pull up things that she and I have experienced together 50 years ago, and I still have them there. And I go, whoa, I need to go again around that mulberry bush and do some more forgiving again and again and again. And so is it the crucifixion experience that reminds us yet again we have another chance?
Yeah.
Could that be possible? Could that be part of this human experience? That those moments of deep pain, of feeling of separation are there to remind us one more time we're all one. What's happening now within you? I mean, when I read the story of Jesus, the master teacher, whether or not I want to believe all of that really happened or not, I can only imagine what it would feel like if somebody was wanting to kill me. just because of what I had been saying and what I was believing. And I don't know about some of you, but when I look out in the world right now, I go, okay, how far is that from being a reality in our world today? Jill?
The one of my hardest forgiveness lessons is forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I read something or heard something about that after this life is over, I'm going to be judged on the way I forgive myself.
Mm-hmm.
That has been profound for me. I mean, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm thinking about something I did wrong when my kids were little, and this is the reason, blah, blah, blah. And that used to, keep me up for hours. And now when that happens, it feels like resurrection when I can say, oh, you know what? This is an opportunity to forgive myself. And that's what's important. And that
Yes.
kind of lifts that burden off my shoulders and I can get back to sleep.
Right, right. Because that one thought separates us in that moment on some level from being the love that we are, from receiving it ourselves. Yes. Anything else coming up about having a resurrection from the places that we have separated ourselves? Jane?
Yeah. What we're talking about here is the miracle.
Mm-hmm, it is.
And the miracle is the shift in perception from crucifixion to resurrection, from fear to love. And as we've been talking about, there's no order of difficulty in miracles. So my little resentment at my neighbor or mother or brother or whatever is just as big as a world war. And I know that sounds crazy, but it all requires our shift in our perceptions. And I just love this part that she mentioned. I'm looking at it in the course book. The crucified give pain because they are in pain. But the redeemed, that's us, hopefully.
Yes.
Some days it is us. It's me some days. But the redeemed give joy because they have been healed of pain. So that's our task here, is getting down off the cross, letting everybody else off the cross too. And that's my ritual at Easter. Anybody I haven't forgiven and I've stuck up on the cross, I let them down.
That's awesome, Jane. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Anything else coming up for anybody to share about the way that you choose resurrection over crucifixion?
I watched a movie last night called Home Run. I'd never heard of. And in the movie, it demonstrated this over and over, that every one of us walking around has these deep-seated wounds, our crucifixions, what had happened to us back there 3 years old, 6 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old, that's informing our actions today. And it depicts a story of a man that was tortured as a little boy by a drunk, alcoholic, abusive father, and what became of him in his life, and then the effects of that, and a great deal of loss and upsets and lives affected, and his attempts to sober up. And how much that I've looked at that over the years, in my early days of like, it's a choice. I could hear myself in these platitudes. It's a choice. Make a choice. Make a choice. Make a choice. And how that it's not clean, one and done in most of us. That it is a process. It is a direction to go in, not a thing itself. And the struggle that he had to get off of that alcohol, that was the beginning of a new life for him. And what it was like to sit and listen in a 12-step meeting to people's life stories, their own struggles, and being abused and being using only heroin once and not having any idea that they would go under the spell of it, and that, and the resurrection coming when it does, not according to my own timing, which is, I cannot make a bean plant grow by pulling on it. And that it is something to keep our hope alive for, and the unseen potential in us, for our own sake, and that the struggles are real. And I don't know, Marcia, if that's what you meant, but I don't speak in terms of ego. I don't use the word at all. I stopped it maybe 2 decades ago now, based on my belief that it was misunderstood, and my own efforts to overcome it, to transform it, to transcend it, to do everything I could with it, instead of like, this ego is the part of me, and it's also the part of me that is calling for resurrection. It's calling for me to change my view of something and to see it rightly. So I've gotten friendlier with it, the term and the energy of it over the years. And the power of that is unspeakable in me.
Most definitely. Paul, I think you had your hand up.
I think we all probably formed our own understanding of what love is when we were children. And, I'd probably still hang on to that definition or interpretation as I'm supposed to like somebody as part of that love. And sometimes that's not always that easy. Not about liking them. It's about acting from a different point of view. But I really was impacted when I listened to a quantum physicist book where he described that everything in the universe, every individual thing, from an electron to a galaxy to the universe, has a process of what he called rhythmic balanced exchange. There's an expansion and contraction, expansion, contraction. Even our sun has an 11-year period where it expands and it contracts. And he just made me stop in my tracks when he said, this is like love. And it made me start to understand love as being more about harmony, harmonious interaction between individuals. That doesn't mean I have to like them. It's about working together in harmony with each other. And if something's going on or that is unpleasant, or you're anticipating will be unpleasant, it's just, I think about, okay, how can I love this person in the rhythmic, balanced interchange kind of way that I can get through this Thanksgiving dinner in a way that there's still harmony going on.
Yes, right.
So I kind of refashioned in my own mind, harmony is a key part of love and the goal of love.
Yeah.
Like Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the same kind of interaction.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Paul. When I think about harmony, I think about a choir singing or musical instruments playing. And, when they all play together, it can be beautiful. And if one of them is playing a disjointed note, it can be kind of interesting all of a sudden. So yes, it's learning to be harmonious with each other. And that can be a beautiful thing, and it can be a challenge at times, depending on who you're in the room with. Anybody else have something? Yes.
There was a time when I thought of love in terms of requiring someone to love or something to love. And my perception changed when I realized that I can live with the desire to love without regard to whether there is someone or something or some time that's right. If I assume that, if I take that on, it takes me to a whole different way of living.
Right, right. That's beautiful. Because we are told we are love. So yes. Yes.
It's helpful to hear that, to even think about years ago, like it was a beautiful African American woman in the Bahamas, and there's a big story I won't go into, but she said, Jesus, keep me close to the cross. Keep me close to the cross, Jesus. Keep me close. It was about to like unload on somebody. So even say, before I respond, let me get love. Let me line up with love here. Let me get myself in love before I do any talking here or any responding to this. Jack, go ahead, honey.
Yeah, first, thanks everybody for putting this on. It's very very good for me. I think it was the Dalai Lama that said pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Yes.
And I'm sure we've all had painful experiences and we suffered for quite some time, but I think through forgiveness, we're able to, get through it. And then actually for myself, I started thanking the people, because without these experiences, I wouldn't be me. And, so it was part of my growth. And so, that's kind of like a resurrection for, from what I was to what I am now.
That's wonderful. Martha, do you want to close this out, my dear?
Well, I will, with gratitude for each and every one of you, your presence here, your sharing, your reflections, your reading, your embodiment of this. It's been extremely inspiring to me, and particularly in like a boot camp, as I spoke about, of this immersion into this absolute immersion. So whatever is meaningful to you, whatever teaching is meaningful to you, I just so encourage you to stay close to it. So if you have a center, stay in that center. Get in that center. If you're looking for a center, find a center. Do something that will absolutely continue to bolster you up on this path. Reverend Ron, Denise, me are available. Others on here, so you're not in any of this alone. There's nothing you ever have to experience alone. That you absolutely are free to reach out to any of us at any time if you see that we could be beneficial, a listening ear, a prayerful uplift, in any way possible to do it. And to continue to take this to heart, so to speak, that this is not just another book we read or another 8 questions we contemplated, but that's something that has literally resurrected, that something has been born again in us, born again through us in this process. And I absolutely have a sense of it. And I am absolutely grateful for that, and about each and every one of you for that. And there's a way Marcia spoke about. I do these immersive processes. They start up in October and go for 8 months. Some of the folks here have done it. If you ever want to come in and be a part of that, you're welcome to. It's not on the website because it's not open to the public. It's only open to people that have a demonstrated capacity for the kind of questions and reflections and things that we do here. And you can contact me directly through the website. My phone number, email, and all of that is there if you have any interest in doing something like that. And this program will come to an end soon, and we'll start back up in October.
Mhm.
And just to present yourself as we close. And give your own thanks for what died in you right on time. What we've had just enough of. What we've set aside. What we've chosen again about. To what's been resurrected. What's been awakened. Aligned and realigned. Actual atonement. We rejoice. We rejoice. And we receive this blessing and we bestow it forward through our own hearts and through our own ways of being. We confer this awakening and the blessings of this awakening, this revitalization, renewal, restoration of our own soul, paid forward, lifted, and allow it to be. So be it. Amen, amen, amen.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Denise. And thanks everyone on the call. It was a wonderful class. It truly, truly was.
It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to be with each of you.
Yes.
Night. Thank you.
Blessings.